Hello and welcome to the special Sunday broadcast. Today marks the 39th anniversary of the tragic Kanishka air bombing, an event that has left an indelible mark on everyone affected by it and those who have seen terrorism in close quarters. That act of terrorism affected one and all in Canada, in India and across the world. The bombing of Air India flight in 1985 was the first terrorist attack overseas on India and its interests. But Canada continued to pursue a policy of appeasement towards Khalistani terrorists. The country seems to be headed to become a soft haven for separatist movement against India. In a recent event, Canada's House of Commons observed a moment of silence on June 18th to mark the first anniversary of the killing of pro-Khalistani figure Hardeep Singh Nijjar. The day also witnessed a large protest in front of India's consulate in Vancouver, which featured, among other posters, those showing the person considered the mastermind of the bombing of Air India Flight 182 in June 1985, the Kanishka, the worst incident of terrorism in Canadian history. Let's take a look at what happened in the Canadian Parliament.
Following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence in memory of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, assassinated in Surrey, British Columbia, 1 year ago today. I now invite honourable members to rise.
So that's the 1 minute silence that was observed in the Canadian Parliament, but there was a response to that 1 minute silence. There was a Indian origin Canadian MP, Chandra Arya, who spoke about this in the House. Listen to what he had to say.
Mr. Speaker, June 23rd is the National Day of Remembrance for Victims of Terrorism. 39 years back, on this day, Air India Flight 182 was blown up mid-air from a bomb planted by Canadian Khalistani extremists. It killed all 329 passengers and crew members, and this is the largest mass killing in Canadian history. Unfortunately, many Canadians are not aware that even today, the ideology responsible for this terrorist attack is still alive among few people in Canada. Recent celebration of assassination of Hindu Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi by Khalistan supporters, glorifying violence and hate, shows that the dark forces have been energized again and point to a dreadful times ahead. Hindu Canadians are rightfully concerned. I stand in solidarity with the families of the victims of Air India bombing.
Now, India has sent a clear message to Khalistani supporters and the Canadian government. The Indian consulate in Vancouver announced a memorial service to pay tribute to the 329 victims of the 1985 bombing of Air India Flight 182 Kanishka, carried out by Canadian Khalistani terrorists. While Canada maintains that Nijjar was a Canadian national and his death was an attack on the country's sovereignty, there are many Canadians who have lost their lives to terrorism and terrorists. But not all are honoured in the Canadian Parliament. So was that a message to India? In the years that followed, the investigation into the Kanishka bombing faced numerous challenges, including a lack of evidence, procedural missteps, and international complexities. Canadian law enforcement has declared that the probe into the devastating bombing of Air India Flight 182, also known as Kanishka, orchestrated by these Khalistani terrorists, is still alive and active. This announcement arrives as the world solemnly commemorates the 39th anniversary of this horrific tragedy. Today, the Indian consulate is holding a memorial service for the victims in Toronto, Vancouver, Ottawa, and many other parts. Listen into what people have to say about the entire incident following Nijjar's killing and the whole honouring of Nijjar in Canadian Parliament.
मेरा नाम चंदन है और मैं कनाडा के टोरंटो शहर में पिछले 16 साल से रह रहा हूँ। 4 दशक पहले यहाँ पे जो एयर इंडिया बॉम्बिंग हत्याकांड हुआ है वो बड़ा ही दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण था और बड़ा दुखद भी था। हम लोग यहाँ पे आए हैं सिर्फ पीसफुली यहाँ पे रहने के लिए और हम आशा करते हैं, उम्मीद करते हैं कि कैनेडियन गवर्नमेंट इस बढ़ते हुए एक्सट्रीमिज़म और टेररिज्म को रोकने की पूरी कोशिश करेगी और कर भी रही होगी।
I am Dalton Burke and I'm originally from Jamaica. Now I am a Canadian citizen and I am very concerned about the terrorist activity happening on Canadian soil. Canada has faces one of its most brutal terrorist attack. Okay, Air India Flight 182 was bombed and mass murder was committed in the sky, and this terrorism originated from Canadian soil. We lost so many innocent Canadian lives. I am going to participate tomorrow at the memorial service at Queen's Park to stand in unity. There is shall be no place for terrorism and extremists in Canada.
So what exactly happened in 1985? On Sunday, June 23, 1985, an Air India Boeing 747 flying from Toronto to Bombay exploded mid-flight and crashed into the Atlantic Ocean, killing all 329 passengers and 22 crew members. The flight originated in Toronto and had stops in Montreal, London, Delhi and Mumbai. This tragic event occurred during the aircraft's journey from Montreal to London. The plane lost contact 5 minutes after departing from London and disappeared from radar shortly after. Approximately 1 hour after the Air India Flight 182 disaster, another bomb exploded at Tokyo's Narita Airport. This bomb detonated during a luggage transfer from an Air India flight originating in Tokyo and bound for Mumbai, resulting in the deaths of 2 baggage handlers. Both bombs were concealed in suitcases checked in at Vancouver Airport. Investigations by Canadian and Indian authorities attributed the bombings to Sikh separatists and Sikh separatist group Babbar Khalsa. There were suspicions that the International Sikh Youth Federation was also involved. The attacks were believed to be in retaliation for Operation Blue Star, an Indian military operation in June 1984 that resulted in the deaths of several Sikh militants at the Golden Temple in Amritsar, Punjab. The investigation and subsequent legal proceedings lasted 20 years and cost the Canadian government nearly 130 million Canadian dollars. The trial concluded with a 10-year sentence for the bomb maker, while the main conspirators were acquitted. A significant 5-volume report released on June 17, 2010 by a Canadian public inquiry led by former Supreme Court Justice John Major highlighted failures by Canadian police and security forces. It was also suggested that Canadian intelligence had prior knowledge of the separatist group's terror plot but failed to act effectively. Inderjeet Singh Rayat, the bomb maker, initially received a 10-year sentence in 1991 for the bomb that exploded at Tokyo's Narita Airport. In 2006, Rayat was charged with perjury for lying during his testimony in the bombing trial. In 2010, he was found guilty and sentenced to 9 more years. Rayat, born in 1952, was released under strict conditions including prohibitions on possessing extremist materials or bomb-making components and restrictions on contacting victims' families. He is required to live in a halfway house and is monitored by a parole officer. His sentence ended in 2018, though his exact residence remains undisclosed due to privacy laws. Families of the victims continue to suffer from the loss of their loved ones. Memorials have been established in Cork, Ireland and Ottawa, Canada, where many gather annually to pay their respects. Despite an apology from the Canadian government, the pain and grief persists 3 decades later. Now, what is the role that Canada plays in the proliferation of the Khalistani movement? Canada has played a very important role in the proliferation of the Khalistani movement. Canada is seen as the country where the Khalistan movement has the strongest presence. The Sikh diaspora in Canada, which constitutes a significant portion of the population, has historically supported the cause in parts. Some of them completely are part of the Khalistani group, while many others now distance themselves from the Khalistan movement. Although the movement has dwindled in support within India, it continues to find pockets of backing among sections of the Sikh community in Canada. Freedom of expression. While support for Khalistan is illegal in India, Sikh activists in Canada are able to speak freely and organize for the cause. This freedom of expression helps cement the diaspora Sikh identity and gives Canadian activists a sense of connection to the Indian homeland. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's allegations that the Indian government was involved in the killing of Canadian Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar further strained relations between Canada and India. Listen in to what he had to say.
India, the government of India, needs to take this matter with the utmost seriousness. We are doing that. We are not looking to provoke or escalate. We are simply laying out the facts as we understand them.
India vehemently rejected these allegations. Listen to Dr. Jaishankar and what he had to say about these allegations.
No, it's not so much a question of running out of options. Look, what we have seen, to our regret, has been the direction of Canadian politics where separatist, extremist forces, many of whom openly advocate violence, have been given political space in that country. And there are people in positions of prominence today in Canadian politics who actually espouse that kind of separatism and extremism. So it's I think a problem from which we have to face up to. We cannot, for the sake of good relations, overlook that.
Now, India has criticized Canada for being a safe haven for terrorists and allowing pro-Khalistan discourse. Today, on 23rd June, the Indian High Commission in Ottawa is organizing a memorial service at the Air India Flight 182 monument at Commissioners Park. The Consulate General of India in Vancouver is also organizing a memorial service at the Air India Memorial at Stanley Park. Members of the Indian diaspora have been encouraged to join the event in a show of solidarity against terrorism. Yet another event is being organized by the Indian diaspora in Toronto as well. The Air India Flight 182 bombing remains a profound tragedy, deeply affecting the victims' families and highlighting significant security and intelligence failures. The incident has left an indelible mark on Canadian and Indian history, serving as a somber reminder of the devastating impact of terrorism. This is an important subject we will be covering through the day. If you're interested in any coverage to do with Khalistani movement and the memorial service that's ongoing in Canada, keep watching India Today Global.